Well, hello and welcome everyone. Welcome everyone that's in person and braved the weather today. Welcome to everyone on Zoom. We're glad to have you and so glad that we have Zoom so everybody can join in. And if you're watching the program after it's recorded, welcome to you also. We've got a great guest today and a great program. We're very excited. So let's get this ball rolling.
Thank you, Phyllis, for that wonderful welcome. And I would like to share some announcements this morning. And just one moment here. There we go. Okay. We know that on Monday, it is the last Monday of the month, which means there is an education committee meeting at 7 o'clock, and it is held virtually on Zoom. If you have an interest in helping out with our education program, I'm sure Jesse would love some assist on that. And you can contact us by way of email at info@susquehanna-valley-ethicalsociety.org and get the information and the link to the Zoom meeting. On Thursday, we've been meeting at 7 o'clock in the evening for an exercise program, which our member Brian Johnson, who is a licensed physical fitness trainer. Hello, Brian. He leads us in a half hour of exercise, getting our heart rates up, getting us pumped for all of that action work that we do in our communities. And we know we need our strength to do that. And we're going to be fortunate today. Brian has a little bit of an exercise routine that he's going to lead us on prior to our speaker today. And I'd like to welcome Drew Bekius as our guest speaker. On Sunday, April 3rd, our platform will be led by Dr. Jay Hooper. The theme for the Sunday, for that month, the month of April, is able and willing. And so Jay's talk will be centered around that idea. On April 10th, we have a very special guest, Tiff Ho. Tiff Ho is the executive director of Foundation Beyond Belief. And she is going to work at getting us excited about doing some very important ethical action work in our community. So you don't want to miss that Sunday with Tiff. Sunday, April 17th, there is no platform. But on Sunday, April 24th, we are going to be creating a special platform program in memory of Al Miller. Al had passed away a month ago. He was a member of SVES and also was our vice president. So we are going to honor Al in a very special way and hoping that folks will be joining in for that. The mission here at Susquehanna Valley Ethical Society is a community of all walks of life that learns and grows together through shared values, doing good, and nurturing the human spirit. We are a safe and courageous place in which members can build a community of friends, find inspiration and purpose, provide moral education for their children, celebrate seasons and life events, and clarify their world views. And now I turn this over to Olivia.
Hello, everyone. As I read through this, I ask that we do intentional breathing taking deep breaths, counting to, let's say, counting in for 5 and breathing out for 7. And this breath is an exchange of life and energy. And so as I'm reading it, just continue to intentionally be mindful of your breath. Ethical culture community meets each Sunday to ethically move with the exchange of breath. Every breath, as we fill our bellies and release, we deepen our sense of the meaningfulness of life. Breathing intentionally, a reminder that we are always exchanging, and the intentionality and mindfulness of the process reminds us to shine a light on the ideas that with which we guide our choices. An awareness of our own breath in chorus with all others and all ways, other forms of life breathe, reminds us and gives us the courage to take the higher path, to get to know one another over time and appreciation of each one's unique and incomparable worth, their own note in the chorus of breath. Breath is air, and air crosses all borders on this planet and out to space and all space. Let the expansiveness of our breath remind us we work together for a world where love and justice intentionally is released with our breath and crosses all borders. We affirm the worth, dignity, and uniqueness of every human being and every breathing being.
Thank you, Olivia. That was beautiful. And Brian, is Brian ready?
Oh, I'm always ready. No me, Patty.
We're on.
Oh, okay.
Yep, you're good.
No, I'm always ready. Hi, everybody. We're just going to do a few little exercises here. Nothing extravagant. You don't have to get out of your chairs. Just be seated. So first of all, we're just going to just kind of do these stretches. Just bring your arm out to the side like this. Just really pull and stretch. We're going to hold that for 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Switch sides. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Again, switch sides. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And then last one over. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Now just reach up and do these. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. All right. And then just bring your legs straight out. If you're at a desk, kind of just scoot back. Just bring your legs straight out if you can. Do the best you can. Hold that for 15 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. The other one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Go back to this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Now let's do one last one with the legs. Just bring leg back out. I think they're behind you. And go ahead and bring the legs straight out. We're going to hold that for 15 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Bring your legs straight out. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Switch legs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15.
Brian, you know why some of us,
Taste of it.
Brian, excuse me, do you know why some of us have our arms up? Because you froze.
We're frozen.
Yeah, you're frozen.
Oh, we are.
We are frozen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why some of us still had our arms up, because you were frozen.
We were
in
like,
that
okay, what's
position.
going on this side? I'm like, I'm really confused.
Oh. Okay, you might need to
Oh, well,
sign out.
everybody was kind of frozen in a moment.
Yes, we were
No,
frozen
that's
in the
a bit of a
moment.
taste
You're right.
of what we do on Thursday.
Right. These are some of the things that we do on Thursdays, but we aren't sitting in chairs, are we?
Give me just a minute.
Yeah,
No, not usually.
right.
Not usually.
What-
We're up, moving around. Can you, everybody hear me okay now?
Yeah. Yeah, you're still frozen. I don't know. Can you? Okay, you're okay now, I believe. Go ahead.
All right. No, I was just saying, no, we are usually up moving around, and, you know, we're not really doing much setting at all. But that just kind of gives you a little bit of a taste of what we do on Thursdays. I would love to see each one of you there on Thursdays at 7. It's from 7 to 7:30, just for a half hour in the evenings, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. So,
It is, Brian. Brian,
thank
what
you.
do you want us to bring this Thursday?
if you will bring pillows, or if you have a floor mat or exercise mat, because we're going to be doing a lot of floor exercises this Thursday.
Okay, looking forward to it. Thank you. Yes, Lena, that is 6 to 6:30 Central Time. You're right.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And so now I will move on to Anthony. Go ahead, Anthony.
Good afternoon, beloved community. We did some exercise this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you are logging in from. I'm still catching my breath, but it was fun. I have the pleasure this afternoon of presenting Drew Bekius, who is the author of 2 books, The Rise and Fall of Faith and Your Next Life Now. He previously served as the president of the Clergy Project, providing peer support and transition assistance to deconverted religious leaders in more than 35 countries around the world. And today, he works as an advisor, helping bring alignment between clients, individuals' financial situations, and their social and environmental values. He is also a speaker coach for TEDx Minneapolis and serves on the board of First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis, the hub for congregational humanism, from which some of us have had the privilege of being connected to for many years. Drew and his 2 teenage daughters live in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Today's topic, just in case you were not able to look on our website or Facebook or any other platform, is about mindfulness. According to Google, is defined as the following. Quote, the quality or state of being conscious or aware of something, end quote. So what does it look like to be a mindful humanist, you might ask? Drew is gonna look at superheroes, yoga mats, and the art of mindfully living out your values. Humanist coach Drew is also going to help us consider what it might look like to practice our humanism more intentionally, honestly, and more vibrantly. Please help us welcome Drew to our space.
Thank you so much, Anthony. And yeah, thanks everyone. So it's great chatting with folks a little bit here as we were all arriving, and it is great to be here with you. But okay, fam, let's see. So we're talking about mindful humanism. And as we get started, I do have a bit of a confession that I have to make. My confession is this. All right, well, hold on. First, I just need to know, with all of the breathing techniques and the body work and the stretching, I mean, it was amazing. I'm guessing we might have a few yoga fans in the house, even status of practitioners, if you will. Go ahead and give a little whoop whoop or put something in the chat or whatever you're comfortable with if you're a yoga fan. Are there any out there? I see lots of movements, okay? And feel free to whoop whoop audibly as well if at any point you feel such desire. But yes, so here's my confession, all right? Here's my confession. You might decide I'm completely not qualified to be here at all this morning. My confession is this. I have only done yoga once in my entire life. Now that said, I did really enjoy it. I was studying in seminary in Chicago at the time. This is back about, 15, almost 20 years ago at this point, studying in seminary in Chicago. And my yoga experience was actually at the Hare Krishna Temple there in the Rogers Park neighborhood, if by chance you're familiar with the space. An amazing space that used to house, if you will, a Protestant Christian group back then, Protestant Christian church back in the day. But then the International Society for Krishna Consciousness came in and redeemed and reinvigorated that stale, dusty old building. And yes, the scenery, the artwork, the sounds and the chantings, the fragrances, all while being led by one of the monks who lived there on site. It really was an absolutely incredible time. I came with an open mind and tons of hopes and expectations, and connected with my body in ways I had never done so before. And I left with a sense of awe and intentionality and just presence, and convinced that I would not only soon return, but continue returning for quite some time after. And yet, I never did. Is it possible? It is possible to practice mindfulness in the moment and yet fail to be mindful beyond it in the big picture. We're talking today, as Anthony gave us such a great intro there, we're talking today about developing a more mindful humanism. And I understand that you all here at the Valley have been talking about mindfulness throughout the month of March. I am so thrilled, again, to join you in continuing that conversation of mindfulness here today. And again, love the community, love all the different elements of this. It's been a while since I've been in a group setting where I was encouraged to focus on my breathing. Maybe that's something I need to upgrade with myself and my own lifestyle. But really, really enjoyable. So thank you for having me. I do, as Anthony mentioned, come from the Minnesota humanist community that we call First Unitarian Society Minneapolis, where we also have the privilege of receiving the work of your consulting leader, Jay Exodus Hooper, as well as Anthony, as affiliate ministers of ours. And so it really is great to have all these connections here. Lane is also part of our community there as well. It is, again, such an honor to be with you today as we talk about mindfulness. However, you might be wondering, how on earth do we have this random ass dude here talking about mindfulness with us today when he's barely stretched an inch in yoga over the course of his entire life? Well, I'm not sure if when you think of mindfulness, your brain, like mine, this is how my brain works, whether or not your brain readily connects mindfulness with meditative technique and practices and things like yoga, but that's where my mind runs to when I hear the term. However, it might surprise you, it may surprise you to realize that according to Webster, rather Google, the new Webster, according to Google, meditation, which actually Anthony read a moment ago as well, because it was in the blurb. It might surprise you that according to Google, meditation technique is only actually the second most common definition of mindfulness. Actually, according to Google, the primary definition of mindfulness is to, quote, is the quality or state of being conscious or aware of something. Let me restate that. It's the quality or state of being conscious or aware of something, of anything, shall we say. So what I would like to suggest here today, okay, our focus here during, these few words that I share, and then maybe then extending into some conversation and some dialogue, Q&A, whatever we might have there. What I would like to do is to encourage, to challenge, to equip us to be conscious, aware, mindful of the extent to which we actually are living out our values, mindful to a greater extent of to what degree are we actually living out our humanism. I'd submit to you today, ask you to consider that a mindful humanism must live beyond words as a lifestyle of embodied values. Let me say that again, okay? Looking at mindfulness as more just being conscious of something, being aware, being intentional about it, that a mindful humanism must live beyond mere words as a lifestyle of truly embodied flesh and blood, living and dwelling within you, and embodied, a lifestyle of your embodied values. So the question becomes this for each of us here today. Does our humanism, does your humanism, does each of our individual humanisms, does it reside purely in words and philosophy, debate, argumentation, theology, theologizing, or is it one of lifestyle? And to what extent does our individual humanism, to what extent does your humanism guide your lifestyle, your everyday, day in and day out? Are we humanists, in other words, in word only, or also in action, in collaboration, and in community? In other words, are we practicing a mindful humanism? Today, I'd like to take us on a little exercise, a little voyage, a little journey, a little humanistic voyaging exercise of journeying, okay? And step one on this voyage, step one is really to identify our values, right? What are your values? That's the first step. For some of us, that might seem introductory. We've done that long ago. I'm guessing for a good chunk of us, though maybe we have done it long ago, we've identified what our values are. It's kind of easy to sort of, well, what is it exactly? What do I really value? But before we can be mindful about living out those values, first we have to understand, well, what are they? And what are mine? Not so much looking at what are our values collectively, not so much looking at what are the values as an ethical society, organizationally, but looking at what are yours individually, all right? And terms can get thrown around a lot. So I want to clarify what we mean by this term values as we talk about your values. I want to clarify, what do we mean by this? Because words are flexible things, right? I mean, even like the word mindfulness, it means different things in different contexts and to different people and in different situations. And so what I would suggest a working definition for your values, it's the core characteristics that frame how you live your life. The core characteristics that frame how you live your life. It's your lifestyle framework. Your lifestyle framework that you play within, that's your core values. So what are then the core characteristics that frame how you want to live, each of us individually, how you want to live your life. And let's keep it a bit aspirational here at first as we kind of think through this. So we want to do this. By the way, if you have a pen and paper, or if you got your phone, go ahead and pull it out, pull up your notes app. We can make some notes. Also too, those who are in the chat today, please, for some of these questions, throw some things out. I'm actually going to be asking you in a moment, like what are some, we're going to look at some different values and invite us to think through which values resonate with us the most, kind of sit with us, vibe with us. I'd invite you, share those in the chat. We want it to be things that people can kind of scroll through and catch kind of easily, so we can all see it easily, rather than like long paragraphs. Let's kind of keep it like a word or two or a quick phrase. But yeah, I'd invite you to share that. Certainly make your own notes in your phone app or on paper or whatnot. So yeah, let's we want to keep this practical in a sense. But for this first step, what are the values you aspire to, even if we might be still stumbling a bit and actually living them out at this point currently? Now, here's the cool thing about humanism. Cool thing about humanism is, as we might be aware, there's no credo, there's no dogma, there's no doctrine, there's no mandated statements of any kind. It's simply humans helping humans with human-based solutions to human problems, right? Which means, among other things, that humanism, it's 100% fully autonomous. There's no other human who has any authority to define it over another human, including yourself, which is great. That's awesome. But on the downside, on the tough side, on the more challenging side of things, it really does end up in the process putting the impetus on you and me, on you individually, to really take ownership of your own values. Gone are the days of pointing back to an ancient book saying, well, I guess whatever's in that is what I value. Or I guess whatever the folk on the stage say I should value, yeah, whatever they say, or whatever's listed in the stage, sure, that's what I value. Those days are gone, my friends. No, we're in charge of what we value. Each of us individually, we're also held responsible for it. We don't delegate that anymore, which of course then requires a certain amount of mindfulness about how we go about identifying those values, pardon me. Now, for those of us who might be in the early days of articulating and identifying such concepts as values, a great starting point might be, I mean, there's lots of great starting points, okay? But one such starting point might be, or would be something called, maybe we're familiar with it, the 10 Commitments, right? Articulated by the American Humanist Association. The 10 Commitments, and it's intentionally set up, though they use the word commitment, they say in there as they explain it, these are humanist values. That's its goal in articulating sort of 10 core humanist values. But again, you're in charge of your values. You're in charge of your humanism. And so we look through these. I'm going to share them. I'm actually going to put them up on the screen. I try not to share, when we're doing over Zoom, I try not to share too much like PowerPoints. You're not going to see a bunch of bullet points up there. I think it's much more valuable that we see each other's faces rather than that faces get lost. Did we, it says I just lost video.
How that happened? Hold
Oh,
on.
because I'm co-host, so it took my video away. Okay, let me turn my video back
There
on.
you go.
Okay, sounds great. Well, thank you for doing that so that I can share. Appreciate that. But yeah, so you know, I try not to share too many you know, just random PowerPoints so that we can see each other. There's power in that, I think, seeing humans. But I do want to share this, and so I am going to go ahead and share just this one thing in case we're not familiar with it. And this is the 10 Commitments. Can we all see this okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a moment. We're going to kind of slow things down. I know I can talk a bit fast and there's lots of energy, okay? Or at least hopefully there is. But we're going to take it down a notch. I'm going to take a moment and just kind of sit with this for a minute, okay? What I'd encourage you to do is really kind of think through, and use the chat feature to share if you'd like, but just to kind of think through, what might my values be? So I'm going to read through these. I'm not really going to expand upon them much. Just kind of read through them so we can take a brief moment to sit with each of them. And again, feel free to, you don't have to stay here. You can pull in other ways to articulate your values as well. But as we think through these, all right, so, one, we have ethical development, right? Ethical development, developing my sense of ethics in how I live as a framework to my lifestyle. And we have another value of working toward peace and social justice, active, working toward peace and social justice. Then we have service and participation, all chipping in, getting it done. We have the value of altruism, kind of a fancy word, but right, altruism, it's helping others in need without need for reward yourself, just selflessly helping folks out. We have the value of humility, the value of environmentalism, the value of global awareness, being aware, being mindful of a whole world of life experiences beyond our own. And along with that, then responsibility, right? We've already kind of touched on that. Responsibility, I'm responsible. I got to take ownership for my values themselves, but even bigger than that, just the value of taking responsibility. The value of empathy, of entering into the experiences of others, of embodying their experiences in a way. And then lastly, the value of critical thinking, of reason, of logic, of taking a step back from it all and assessing. Now, the interesting thing is, and you might think of it this way as well, and I'll leave these up for another moment here as we sit through these, but talking about critical thinking, oftentimes that tends to be the entry point for a lot of folks with humanism. So much so that in some circles, you kind of get the impression that critical thinking is the only value of humanism. Sometimes it can even take a slightly, dare I say, toxic tone where it's all about just, trying to prove that you're right and all the religionists that you don't agree with are wrong. It can become argumentative. Some would actually equate humanism, as just another synonym for non-theism. Well, that's not what the great historic global community of humanists would say by any means, but that is what you might hear in some circles. And so it's important for us to see this and sit here in this collective set of values to see that, wait a minute, sitting in your head and spouting logic, though it does have a place, and I also don't want it to sound like that has no place. It does have a place as long as it also holds with it all the other values, whatever those exactly might look like, but keeping in mind that generosity for your fellow humans. There is a place to have critical thinkers for philosophy and theology, and all those kinds of things do play a role. But I think this is helpful in us seeing, but it also goes far beyond that in the framework through which we live. So as we take just another moment to sit with these and articulate ours, once we've done so, and of course, this journey goes far beyond today, far beyond today. I'm going to go ahead and pull this down now, if that's all right. Let's see. As this journey of identifying our values goes far beyond today, for some of us, this is simply the beginning step in an exciting journey of what do I really cherish and how do I actually want to live my life. But as we've done that, once we've identified our humanist values, then it's time for step 2. And step 2 is using those values to upgrade our humanist lifestyle, to actually live them out. Because again, a mindful humanism must live beyond words as a lifestyle that embodies those values, that takes those values and breathes them in and lets them resonate, that holds them in, where they take residence within our being, within our souls, if we like words like that, within our deepest selves, and then breathes them out into the world around us, that embodies our values. And that's step 2. When I was a steakhouse manager in Chicago, this is in the years following my work as an evangelical Christian pastor, in those immediate years, which now are about a decade ago. When I was a steakhouse manager in Chicago, the general manager, my boss, I was just like the floor manager. He's the general manager. He's the big guy, an amazing guy. Okay. And he was great in a lot of ways. One thing he would do is if he was ever walking by a workstation that needed assistance, he was the first one to jump in. He was never, ever one of these managers who was always like hiding in the back office, just doing paperwork all day. If anything, he might have gotten in trouble from his bosses for not doing enough paperwork, but no, he was always out and about and very active. And so if he's walking by a workstation, anybody needs assistance, he's the first one to jump in without question, just starts helping. Okay. But like most of us, on those tasks typically delegated to others, well, sometimes, it might get a little bit blurry, a little bit fuzzy on what exactly the details are of how you do the things you're delegating off. So when you jump in to help out, it's like, well, I think this is how it works, but you just jump in, right? And so my manager here, he had this thing that he would do where if anybody ever called him out on it and was like, actually, excuse me, Paolo, it's not 3 ounces, it's 2. Or we don't do that at 5 o'clock, we do that at 4. Or we're currently in Chicago, not Susquehanna. Anything like that, his immediate response was always the same. It was amazing. He'd joke and he'd laugh and he'd say, oh, of course, Poppy. Of course I knew that. I was just testing you. I said the wrong answer on purpose to make sure you're paying attention, but good job, you passed. It was always a lot of fun. Everybody'd always laugh. It was great. It was always taken as the joke that it was intended to be. And so we asked ourselves then today, do we only know our values well enough to talk vaguely about them, especially for those of us who have been doing humanism for a while, for those of us who feel very at home in our humanism? Do we only know our values well enough to talk vaguely about them, quizzing others even if jokingly, like Paolo? Or do we really know them so much that they truly do reside within us, are a part of us, and drive how we live? Then I suppose maybe another question, do they drive how we live once in a while, whenever there's a big humanist event? Whenever somebody else kind of pulls us out? Or do we live out our framework lifestyle of humanism kind of day in, day out? Where are we in that? And there's no shaming, there's no wrong answers. The only wrong answer, I suppose, would be no, and I don't care. Hopefully we're not feeling that. But we're all a work in progress. We're all at least trying to, right? At least progress at the most. No, there's no masters of humanism here. I don't think there is such a thing. Anybody who thought there were a master of humanist might not be a humanist, all right? Back when I was a minister, I would often say things like this. I would say, listen, look at how a person lives, and you will see what their real values are. Look at how a person lives, and that will tell you what their true values are. Now, I would qualify that a little bit here today to acknowledge now that just because those values might not be readily visible, just because those values might still be brewing, percolating, pop, pop, pop underneath the surface, doesn't mean that they're not in process. And it doesn't mean that they're any less real. It just means that they're in process. Our task now is to help advance them along the process, right? But ultimately, eventually, it really does come down to how are we living? How are you living? And I would suggest humanism that stays in the head isn't really humanism at all. I mean, again, you're autonomous. You're in charge to define your humanism however you want. But I would suggest, from my vantage point, that humanism that stays in the head isn't really humanism at all. That humanism must push from the head forward through the heart and into the hands. So what does that look like? Well, that's the tricky artistry of it all, isn't it? That's where the mindfulness comes in, the intentionality, the creativity in how we allow this, invite this, demand this manifests itself into our regular day-to-day lives. And so I'd encourage you to do something like this. I mean, there's a lot, you can do whatever the hell you want, okay? But I'd encourage you to do something like this, all right? And here's why, let me back up a moment. what can become difficult is when we look at the big picture of where we want to land. Today, we're talking about our humanistic, lifestyle, our humanistic values, but it can be any set of goals, really. When you're looking at, I want to be here one day, I'm going to do all of it right now. It can kind of immobilize you, not kind of, like totally. I mean, think back to like New Year's resolutions, right? They're so cliched because people don't actually do them, right? It's like, I got this long list. I'm going to work out. I'm going to eat right. I'm going to do all these things. And I'm going to meet the human of my dreams and da 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 da. Okay. And we have all those things listed out, and we kind of, we come out busting out of the gate, fists up in the air, blasting forward for like a couple days, maybe a week. And then a couple days after that, we start to wind it down. And by the end of January, we don't even remember it anymore and we joke about it because it is a joke. Same thing kind of with this. What's much more effective is to say, we're going to take this in piecemeal. We're going to take it one step at a time. So what I'd encourage you to do today, now, I'd encourage you, look back at one of those values. Even if it's, maybe if you're somebody where like, you got to have everything organized, you're like, well, I haven't organized it all quite yet. That's okay. Just take one tentatively. Pick a value. Not one you've mastered already. If you've mastered all your values, well, you might need to reassess how you're looking at your values. But so pick one where you need to do your work on this. You're lacking on this one value of yours. Pick it, circle it, grab it. And what we're going to do, we're going to take that, we're going to sit with it. We're going to sit with it. We're going to reassess. We're going to take a look. Now, we already know that this is one that we acknowledge we need to do work on. So we're going to take it, we're going to sit with it, we're going to focus on it, and we're going to think through what are some of the ways where I'm lacking here. And again, there's no shame in lacking. We're humans. That means we're all lacking. I mean, not in our worth, not in our worth, but we can all, none of us are perfected, instruments of morality and perfect ethics and perfect. We're always have things we can do a little bit better, okay, in towards of living out what we value. At least I would suggest that. So, but you take one, you sit with it. So where can I improve on this? And it might take humility, okay? Might take humility. Maybe you sit with humility and you say, you know what? Sometimes I do get a little puffed up. Sometimes I do come across as arrogant. And in fact, that asshole at work calls me arrogant all the time. I don't know what the hell his problem is. You might, maybe you think once in a while you're kind of a jerk to your kids or to your partner or to your dog, whatever it may be. So you sit with it and you say, you know what, here's some areas where I could improve. I haven't mastered the art of humility yet, the value of humility. And then what you do is you say, let's pick one action, one thing I can do for this month. And that's going to be the only thing I'm going to worry about this month. Now, there's other things that come across in life you need to take care of, right? It's not literally the only thing you're doing. But if I can do this one thing, I'm not going to try and magically accomplish all of my humanistic goals within 1 month's time. No, but I am going to focus on this one thing. And hopefully by the end of the month, we'll be sitting a little better. And maybe at the beginning, it does start in the head. Maybe I'm going to read a book on humility, and just reading that book on humility, that's my humanistic, that's my action for month number 1. Maybe then month number 2 is saying, okay, well, now I'm going to take this a step further in my embodying my value of humility. I'm going to take this a step further, laying groundwork. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to do 1 coffee date a week with each person in my family, however you do it. Okay. Well, I'm going to sit down with 1 family member a week or 1 loved one a week. And I'm going to ask them, please be real. I need to hear it. I feel like I'm lacking in humility. What are your thoughts? No, really. No, for real. I really want to know. I know I'm not going to bite your head off. I'm going to try not to, but really, I need to, I want to learn, or something like that. What do you think I can do better? How can I be more humble, less of a jerk at home or at work or coaching Little League, whatever it is you do? And just having one of those conversations every week for a month. That's your action for month number 2. Then you go on from there. Maybe then month number 3 is just twice a week, I'm going to journal about this. Well, how can I root this within my heart and my mind? How can I really let this take residence within me? And by the time month 4 comes along, you might already just be automatically, you're more aware of it because you're thinking of it more. But now you're thinking of it just not when you're trying to think of it. It is taking root within you. And by the time month 4 comes around, you might already be living more humbly without it actually being even an action step. But then at that point, there's things you can do like, okay, well, I'm going to keep my eyes open. Every time I notice myself being a jerk or being arrogant or not being humble, I'm just going to take note of that. And then tonight when I get home, I'm going to take 5 minutes to just review what could I have done different and how can I loop that back in to my growth. And then month 5 comes along and you might say, you know what? Okay, I'm ready to move on and focus on a different value for this month. Maybe then you move on and your value for month 5 is social justice. And you say, my action is I'm gonna join a protest this month. That's my action point. Or maybe you decide you're gonna do environmentalism for your value for month number 5 instead. And you decide to write your congressperson, or maybe your action for month number 5, you decide to do the value of participation instead. And so your action is to volunteer to join the Valley's cleanup committee. Woohoo, right? It can be a lot of different things. It can be anything. The challenge here, though, is to begin that routine where we're always looking for just one little thing that we can do. And maybe if one of our values is not always having to put so much stress on myself, maybe one of those actions is I'm going to take this month to just not do any actions. Just breathe. It can be anything. Mm-hmm. It can be anything, which is what brings us to our final step here. And this one's a little more quick, okay? It's a little more obvious, maybe. Once we've identified our humanist values and upgraded our humanist lifestyle, or started to, now's the time where we get to unleash the humanist power of community. Maybe it's not so much a third step, but it's something you have alongside you all the way. Might be the better way to think of it. There's this iconic scene from The Avengers. Yeah, I know, it's the comic book superhero Marvel movie, right? It's one of those, right, you love it or hate it. I know a lot, right? A lot of us we're all about the comic book superhero movies. Others of us are like, no, again, even here, come on, please, really? Just bear with me, okay? Now, critics tell us, film critics tell us that in the Avengers, there's this foundational scene about almost exactly halfway through that first Avengers movie, where in that foundational scene, all these concepts are brought together and interweaved together, and that lays the groundwork for what makes the entire franchise therefore a success. Critics actually compare it with, I'm sorry, I'm going to really nerd out here, okay? I'm going to compare it with the DC. If you're not a comic book, just know a different set of comics, okay? Like Superman instead of Iron Man, okay? They compare it with that set of movies. They're like, you want to know why that one flopped? The whole series, nobody really cares. Sorry if you care, I apologize. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm working on it though. It's in my values. They say the reason why that was not the critical success, the DC universe, that the Marvels are, is because it doesn't have this scene. It doesn't have this type of moment in there. The DC ones, they all come together and it's like they just already know what's going on. They just do it. Where what this iconic scene is halfway through the first Avengers movie is you have all these random superheroes coming together. All these random superheroes all doing their own thing. And it's this scene, it's the one, if you know the movie, it's the one, it's in that big white room on the ship, whatever, and they're all coming together for the very first time. And they're each coming with their own priorities, with their own missions, their own hopes, their own ambitions, their own values. And none of it is bad. It's all good stuff, but they're different. They all got different things going on, different agendas. And when what happens in this scene, they explode. They conflict with one another. They literally fight one another. Have to learn to work together to accomplish the goals that they share. They each come with their own agenda, and none of those agendas are largely good, at least. They just have to take a moment to hear one another out, to understand where each is coming from, and to learn how can we leverage each other's strengths towards accomplishing that larger goal. You see, humanist values are really easy if there's no other humans in the way. We're all pretty great humanists until another human enters the room. Everyone else just stay out of the way, please. I'm trying to be a good humanist here. But when all those other humans enter the mix, yes, that's when our humanism is truly tested. But it's also where our humanism's full power is unleashed. You know the old proverb, I'm guessing, many hands make light work. Well, the truth is, big things get done together. Big things get done in community. While it's also true, yes, that sometimes it's the seemingly insignificant things that can have the greatest impact. That is true. It's also true as well that playing a smaller role in a more collaborative way can actually get more done in the proverbial long run than trying to be your own damn superhero. Now, community can be tough. Let's be honest. I'm an extrovert, okay? I love a room full of people. And yet, even for folk like me, around other humans can be really tough sometimes. But when we're talking about living out our humanist values, when we're talking about harnessing a more mindful humanism, whether we're talking about the kind of humanist values that are more externally focused, helping to transform the entire world, making it more equitable, making it more sustainable for one another, or whether it's a little more smaller scale where we're talking about the kind of still nonetheless very critical human values that simply aim to attain a greater level internally of personal decency, of responsibility, of compassion. In all of these sorts of humanist values, practicing our humanism in community makes it both more effective and more rewarding. It makes it more powerful. Whether it's the collective wisdom that you each receive from one another, or the collaborative endurance to push through our limits together, whether it's the uplift of support and encouragement we receive, or the exchange of innovative and creative new ideas, or the borrowed motivation, or the sense of social accountability. In all of this and more, our values unfold in community, and there the humanist lifestyle finds footing and thrives. That's why it's called that's why it's called humanism, not individualism. It's other humans, not just me. So how are we leveraging one another to do greater good, to cheer one another more cheerfully onward, to build the life and family and community and world that we all so desperately need and want and long for? How do we each play a part in this, leveraging one another together? Again, mindful humanism must live beyond words as a lifestyle of embodied values. And so our takeaway questions for this morning, I'm going to leave you with 5 takeaway questions, and then I know we got some other stuff going on and we can continue the conversation, but our 5 takeaway questions are this. 1, how mindful are you willing to be in your humanism? 2, what are the humanist values that we want to build into our lives? What are those? 3, what actions will we commit to in upgrading our humanist lifestyle? 4, how will we leverage the power of community around us? And then 5, how will we start doing all of this today? What action do we take now? Thanks, fam.
Thank you, Drew. Wow. Okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to get busy. Oh my gosh. Yes, so I think what we will be doing, go ahead, Jay.
No, I was gonna say we can do the closing, bring us into the Q&A. I'm sure, I hope, and in the end, Drew, I didn't expect anything less. I have to, you are my sibling, my sibling in this work. I appreciate you. I thank you so much. So please know that your words and everything really, really moving. They catch movement. And I really appreciate that. But I want to just give us into the closing. I hope that y'all feel good. I hope that you feel like you're a step closer to understanding, and not only understanding, but also practicing. And not only just practicing, right, for your own self, but modeling, right? Being able, if in my world, right, strutting your stuff. As my ancestors would say, stretch your stuff in some humanism, right? And make sure that you look the part, right? As you got to walk it like you're talking, as my grandmother would say. Those kinds of things are very important. So I invite you in this closing to put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with light. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with truth. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with compassion. And may it always follow you wherever you go, in any life you touch, in any breath, any air of breath that you breathe. May it also be shared back to you, so you will never see an empty space, but know that you fill the space with every step you take.